Hello. How's it going out there tonight?
Whoa. You stumped me now.
Check out our website, mannimalresearch.com. Thanks to everybody. Hello. How's it going out there tonight? Hope everyone is doing well. Those of you that will hang out with us live tonight, those of you that will catch it later, sure do appreciate it. Thank you very, very much. All right. Super excited about tonight's show, guys. We are fresh off of the Squatch Out, the third annual East Tennessee Squatch Out. Tonight looks like we got Miss Sandra Piper, of course. I think I saw somewhere on Facebook where she's the godmother of Bigfoot chat rooms. I don't know about that, but she can always count on her to be here with me, and I appreciate that. Ninja Dave hung out with us a little while at the Squatch Out, and the beautiful and lovely Miss Jordan. Thank you, ma'am. Even though you're just a few rooms away, appreciate you being supportive. Thank you. All right. Like I said, guys, got a good one lined up tonight. One I've been excited about and looking forward to for a while now. I got my buddy Brian from Sasquatch Odyssey coming on, and I really can't say buddy because he has become a friend. I did his show. I've been on there a couple of times, and he's actually shared a couple of our episodes, the Janice Carter stuff. So yeah, during all of that, I got to talk to Brian quite a bit and become pretty good friends. He hung out at the Squatch Out with this came up, and he was our speaker, our main speaker. We had three, and Brian, bad cleanup for that one. He ended the night out for us, but it was a great time. It really, really was. Before we get into it, let's do all this. Everybody hit that subscribe button if you have not done so already. I would appreciate it. The show continues to grow. Let's keep it going in the right direction. If you have had an encounter and would like to be a guest on the show, all you have to do is reach out, mannimalresearch@yahoo.com. Be happy to talk to you and get that set up. Also, we are on Facebook. Everybody's got a Facebook. Nothing to be ashamed of. We all do it. So yeah, if you haven't joined the group over on Facebook, hit us up. I got a link on the tonight's show. Several links. I'm going to start doing that. Something that I hadn't been doing, and there's no reason for it. I just haven't been doing it, but I'm going to start doing it on every episode that we have. Like I've talked a little bit in the past about where the show's about to go through some changes, and we'll get more into that. But that's one of the things I'm going to start doing is putting several links on the on all the show notes. So yeah, join us over on Mannimal Research on Facebook. If you got any questions for Brian tonight, guys, feel free to send them his way. But if you do so, put them in all caps. Just makes it easier for me to see and get to them. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. If I don't ask your question, it's not on purpose. I just didn't see it. So if it goes a little while and I don't ask, type it again. Just put them in caps so that I can make sure. Makes it a little bit easier for me to see them. All right. I also got it linked tonight, but join or go check out our website, unscriptedpodcast.com, and get all of our episodes over there. I'm going to start putting a lot more content out there. You could also find our merch. Our online store is there as well. Yeah, got all of that out of the way. Let's talk a little bit about the Squatch Out. Had a really good time this past weekend, guys. Those of you that were able to come and hang out, thank you so much. not everybody camped. There were several people that just came by to watch the presentations and just to talk, hang out, and meet some people, and we appreciate it all the same. Got some pictures here. We'll share them real quick. That is obviously me, Walls, and that's all three of our speakers. Got Mr. Brian there on the far right, Connor, Bigfoot Anon, and Dr. John Baranchuk over there on the left. And you know those two ugly guys in the middle. Yes, that was right after the presentations. That was before everything got started. People were starting to file in everything, and some of you may know my daughter Scarlett came with us on the trip. This was her first ever camp out, not to mention squatching. But the only, I guess, really accident we had over the weekend was her. She took a header into a piece of firewood Saturday afternoon, just a few hours before we were set to go on with the presentations. I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off. We just finished up a group meeting with Mannimal and got over there, and she fell and cut it open pretty good. So we had to leave. Honestly, I think it hurt her mama more than it hurt her. But she's okay. We took her to the emergency room there, had to leave, had a whole bunch, everything going on. And of course, you know, anytime you're busy, something's going to happen. So, yeah, took her over there, and this is the after shot. They ended up gluing it instead of putting a stitch in there, which we're grateful for. I think that's going to help with the scarring. But she's good, no concussion or anything like that. That's what we were worried about. I think the trip to the ER was more for us than it was her. But yeah, she was fine. All right, there's the banner Jordan made us. Just go through these a little bit. There's Miss Scarlett. She was the first night passed out. If y'all can't tell, I'm proud of my daughter. She runs the house. She's the boss. Yeah, it was a good time. It was. Brian's gonna come on, and Brian's got some other stuff to talk about. You know, about how he got into this, his past career and everything. But we're gonna talk about the Squatch Out as well. So we'll do some more of that when he comes on. Also, I got to announce a day or so ago that I'm not sure if you call it a documentary or what, the movie that I was asked to be a part of came out on Tubi. And that's called Battle of the Beasts, Bigfoot versus Yeti. So if y'all haven't done so yet, go check that out and let me know how I did. It was the first time I'd ever done anything like that. So it was cool to get to see how how all that stuff's made, how it's done, and all the work that actually goes into putting something like this together. It takes a long time to put these things out. So yeah, it was pretty cool. In there with Dr. Jeff Meldrum, Cliff Brackman, some other people. So being in there with guys like that was pretty cool. So yeah, I had fun. But guys, check that out and let me know what you think. It's kind of it's a fun type movie. It's not an educational thing by any means. It's kind of it's a hypothetical, you know, poking fun at who would win, Bigfoot and versus Yeti. And they told me that. The producer told me that going in. He said wanted to make sure that I understood that they weren't poking fun at Bigfoot, at the subject or anything like that. It was just something, you know, fun that they were going to try. And that's how it came off. So I was pleased with it. So yeah, guys, check that out if you don't mind. All right, I think that's all I've got. I'm 10 minutes in, so sounds about right. So yeah, if you guys are ready, we're gonna bring Brian on. There he is. What's up, buddy? How's it going, Brian?
What's going on, man? Let me turn my mic on, act like a professional. What's going on, man?
Doing good, buddy. How's it going? I know you're a little bit under the weather, like myself. How you feeling?
I feel like I've been rode hard and put up wet, but I'm okay. I'm okay.
Really?
We'll get through it.
Yeah, that's something I wanted to bring up too. I put a post out on Facebook today asking if anyone else wasn't feeling well because Scarlett and I are sick. Jordan had to go to the emergency room the other night. She's got severe bronchitis. She had to get a breathing treatment, and they gave her a inhaler and steroids and all this stuff. So she's taking the brunt of it. And then I talked to you this morning. You told me you weren't feeling well, so I put it out there on Facebook. It turns out several people had the funk, man. I don't know, just the cold weather, I guess. What do you think?
Yeah, I saw people responding to what you put out, and I was like, yeah, it hit me like the day I got back. I started kind of feeling run down, and then it's just been downhill from there. It's been one of those days where I've been hoping my throat would hold out. So we'll see if it does or not.
Yeah, I know that you just finished up an interview. Appreciate you doing that, working me in. We talked about this a week ago. I thought it'd be cool to have you as my first guest after, and you said, "Oh well, you had something lined up." So we normally go on at 7. You had him scheduled for 7, so you literally jumped off from him and jumped right over to me, and I appreciate it. And that's got to be rough, not feeling well.
Yeah, it was a great interview with Michael Freeman. If you guys aren't familiar with Michael, he's the son of Paul Freeman, and most people that are into Bigfoot will know about the Paul Freeman footage. And I had Michael on because he sort of picked up the torch with his dad, and he's writing. Well, the book is finished. I have an advanced copy of the book now that he sent me, and he's basically put together all of the stuff that his dad put together over 15 years of research. And he's putting in this book, and it's not just a book that he's written like pages like you would expect. I think he said it's about 200 pages, but it's also a ton of photos, never before seen videos, and they've worked on, and he actually just texted me a few minutes ago, the enhancements to the footage itself.
Really?
Yeah, and there's a big surprise in the footage that most people don't know about. So that's going to be a part of the book when it gets released. I'm obviously not going to show the footage. I'm going to take a look at it at some point tonight or tomorrow, but it's something that's going to be put out with the book. So it'll be part of that deal that you'll get that. And they're doing really cool things. It's Doug Hychek and his sons, Alex and Blaine at Hanger One Publishing, that's publishing the book. And in addition to just being a written book or like an audio book, they do these really cool like QR code things, so you can scan the QR codes and listen to audio or watch video as you go through the book itself. So it's going to be a really interesting book. I think I pinned him down at the end of the interview. I think it's going to be about 2 to 3 weeks when it goes to print. If he approves this last copy, like I said, I've got an advanced copy that's not even approved for anybody to see, but he's got to go through that, make sure everything's right, no typos and that kind of thing. So probably 2 to 3 weeks to print, but I'm excited to look at the video. I was trying to look at the Paul Freeman footage online today before I got on with Michael, and it's horrible, right? It's really pixelated. There's no way to really see what's going on. You can tell there's something walking across this path, but Doug Hychek and Cliff Barackman have been working to independently of one another on their own time to both enhance this. Doug's been working on it for 20 years, and he's gotten it to a point now that Michael is okay with putting this out there, because he wasn't in the beginning, because he didn't want it to be anything 100% right. So I'm excited about it. I can't wait. I didn't mean to hijack you.
No, it's you, man. This is about you. That's awesome, man. And yeah, you talked about the quality not being great. I mean, he shot that thing on one of those old school VCR, VHS, where you put the whole VHS in the computer and a big one on your shoulder and all that stuff. So yeah, man, the quality's not gonna be that great. But I did want to ask you, what was your thought before talking to him? What was your opinion on the Freeman footage? Because the Freeman footage to me is up there with the Patterson Gimlin. You got the Patterson Gimlin, and then you got Paul Freeman, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And the first time that I saw it, it didn't pass the smell test for me. There was just something about it that just seemed off. Mm-hmm. But the more I watched it, it was very similar to the Patterson Gimlin film. The more I watched the footage, I thought, that's the real deal, right? I think that's a real live Sasquatch. And then obviously just getting to talk to Michael and him talking about his dad's reaction when he got home after filming that, and them sitting down, he and his friend in the living room, watching that for the first time on their VHS, the VCR on this VHS tape. There's no doubt in my mind after having that conversation with Michael that it's 100% the real deal.
That's awesome, man. I can't wait. Can't wait to catch that interview. And when did you say the book was coming out?
He's probably 2 to 3 weeks before it goes to print. So you can pre-order it now. I'm going to put that in the show notes of my show when I put the episode out, probably next week on Friday. But you can pre-order the book now. If you go to Hanger One Publishing, their website, you can pre-order it now and go. I think you save like $10 if you pre-order it. But it's not just a regular book. Now this is going to be like a huge like coffee table type book that's going to sit on your coffee table. It's kind of because it's got a lot of pictures and a lot of evidence that you're going to be able to see that, like I said, that nobody else has seen in the past. In addition to hearing, Paul Freeman in his own words, Michael said he's got about 7 hours of just audio that his dad recorded while he was out researching that nobody has ever heard. And he pared that down to about an hour that's going in the book, I think. And then all the photos and the videos. And then obviously the big thing is the enhanced video.
Yeah, you went ahead and answered my next question, which was going to be when you think your episode with him is going to release. And you think that's maybe next Friday?
Yeah, at this point, it's looking like next Friday.
Okay, yeah. And you mentioned Doug Hychek a couple of times talking about this. You guys have become pretty close, right? What kind of relationship do you and Doug have? And y'all are working on something, right? You want to go ahead and talk about that?
Yeah, Doug had initially came on the show and we had a blast, and then he had me over on his show and we just kind of continued to grow from there. And he's done the Untold Radio Network, and if you haven't checked it out, it's on YouTube. It's Untold Radio Network. He had this idea a while back of not just having one show on YouTube, but doing multiple shows and dropping things every single day. So he wanted content every single day. And he put together, I think it was 6 or 7 shows at the time. And we were talking on the phone about something completely unrelated. And he just mentioned it to me one day. Would I be interested in doing something on YouTube? Because I have a YouTube channel, like 400 and something subscribers, because I don't really post a lot of stuff over there. I'm trying to do better. I started working on that today. I was creating some thumbnails for some of the videos that I have up over there. But in general, I just wasn't doing the YouTube thing. So Doug said, would you be interested in doing a show? Sure. I like to read encounter stories, like real encounter stories. And I like to narrate books and things like that in addition to doing the other 3 shows. So I thought, well, if you want me to do something like that where I narrate and, occasionally bring somebody on and do interviews, then I'll do that and give it a try and we'll see what happens. I mean, it's Doug. I'm not going to say no to him. I'm going to at least give it a try, right? So I did, and I just posted the 6th episode. I wasn't feeling well this week, obviously, so I wasn't really into narrating an hour show on a bunch of stories. So I posted the video of my interview with Les Stroud from Survivor Man. So that went up today over there on the Untold Radio. And it's also available anywhere you listen to podcasts as just an audio podcast as well.
All right, very cool. Very cool. Yeah, man, this is normally one of the first questions I ask people, but we got off topic a little bit. What got you into this subject? What sparked your interest? You grew up in North Georgia, not too far from me. Yeah, man, what got you started?
Sorry, I had to turn my Mannimal tumbler that I'm drinking my ginger ale out of around so everybody could see it.
That's a beautiful tumbler, man. Where can I pick one of those up at?
Somewhere that Wayne, this wonderful guy that from Mannimal Research, sent this to me in the mail. I didn't even have to ask him. He just sent it to me. It was great.
Yeah,
and
he sounds like a great guy.
Yeah, it makes the coffee in the morning taste better, and it makes the ginger ale I'm drinking now taste even better. So you guys got to get you a tumbler.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit different, I think. Some people say it was the show that I watched, and I don't really have memories of that. I think it was literally hearing stories growing up in the North Georgia mountains about these people that had experiences with something that I now know to be Sasquatch or Bigfoot, that at the time was just big hairy man or boogers or whatever they called them. And one story in particular, and I asked my mom about it. My mom actually came to the Squatch out and camped out with us for a couple of days. My mom and my nephew. And I asked her while we were there, I was like, do you remember the story about the ginseng hunters that were ran off the mountain? And this is like North Georgia, like Somerville area. And she said, no, I don't remember that story, but I don't remember where I heard it. I don't know if it was one of my great grandparents that told the story or not, but these two ginseng hunters were up and they had an encounter with Sasquatch, and they're up on the side of this mountain, and these guys flew down the mountain. I'm talking, they were cut up, they were beat up, they were worse for wear when they got off the top of this mountain. And they told a story very similar to what we hear from tons of people, that they had this run in with this big, hairy, 8-9 foot tall creature, and it scared the crap out of them. And they didn't know what it was, and people thought they were crazy. Of course, they were making it up, that kind of thing. But that story always stuck out to me. And just recently, I was doing some research, I don't know, maybe 2 months ago, I was wanting to do a story, like story time episode on my show. And I actually looked into a database, and I found that particular story about those two hunters from back in it was early 80s. So I was probably 6 or 7 or so when it happened. And then I, of course, heard about it as I was older. But that always stuck out to me. And then I had my own experiences that I can't explain when I was about 12 years old that, to this day, I don't know what it was, but I'm pretty sure that I may have had a run-in with something I can't explain. And, that just sort of sparked the interest, and it's been something I've always been interested in.
Yeah, I'm going to get you to talk about those as well. But do you remember what mountain it was that the ginseng hunters had this encounter with?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but I can certainly look back. I have the database saved on my computer, and I can look at it.
It wasn't Lafayette Mountain, was it? Pigeon Mountain?
No.
Didn't ring a bell. Okay.
No, it wasn't in the Lafayette. I know where Lafayette is. It's not. This is like in Chattooga County in Somerville area.
I got you. Okay. Yeah, that's that'll certainly get your interest going. One would think. But what experiences did you have? Like you said, you were around 12 years old. Did something happen out in the woods or what?
I was probably 12 or 13, and I fancied myself kind of a squirrel hunter, and I would always go out in the woods. We rented a house from these folks, and we were poor. We didn't have land in the house of our own for sure. We rented this place, and I don't know, it's probably 20 acres or so, big open fields, and then a lot of wooded areas. So I was out all the time. And, back then you didn't have games and things like that. You actually went outside and played and did your thing. So I was always out in the woods. And I went out one particular day during the summer, and I went out just like I always did. But I had this really weird, ominous feeling. Just something wasn't right. It was always just something just under the surface of, I feel like I'm being watched. I just, it's just weird. And of course I'm 12. I'm, 12, 13 years old. And I was a little bit of a scaredy cat back then. I didn't like the dark. And, so I thought, well, maybe I'm just having this, I'm just freaking myself out or whatever. And I start hearing these things, what sounds like something walking in the woods, thinking, well, it's probably a deer. It doesn't sound like a deer. It sounds bigger. It doesn't sound like it's on all fours. It sounds like it's on 2 feet. Then it gets closer, and then I hear these branches breaking, and then I hear huffs and growls. And then comes what I believe, or to know now, to be a bluff charge. And I just stopped in my tracks. It was one of those fight or flight situations, and I just chose to freeze. And then it did it again. Huffing, growling. At this point, a couple of bluff charges. Well, the fight or flight kicked in. It was no longer fight. It was no longer frozen. It was flight. I'm asshole and elbows. I am getting it. I'm gone. And I ran all the way back to the house, probably, 400 or 500 yards. I don't know. Good sprint, but it was definitely time to go. And, I don't know what does that. I don't know what makes those. I know what a deer grunt sounds like. It wasn't a deer grunt. Deer don't bluff charge you. I don't know if they were bear back then. I know we got bear here in North Carolina. I don't know if there was any black bear in that area, but I don't think it was a bear grunting. I don't think it was a bear snorting. So I don't know. I didn't see what it was, but I just knew that there was something that I wasn't supposed to see, or I wasn't supposed to be around, and it was time for me to go. So I went.
I'm assuming you didn't see anything.
Didn't see a thing. No.
Okay, we got a question here from Cat Chaser. Cat Chaser is new to this show, by the way. I want to thank you for hanging out with us. Not that one, this one. Brian, how intelligent do you feel Bigfoot is?
Well, on the 5 days of the week that I'm pretty sure that they exist, I would have to say very intelligent. When you talk to as many people as I've talked to for the show, and they've had so many different types of encounters with these things, they have to be extremely intelligent. Number one, to go unseen for the majority of the time, right? That's one of the questions I always have from people is, how are these things not being seen? So to me, that's a sign of intelligence. If you can elude a human being, you're fairly intelligent, right? Mm-hmm. Big cats are intelligent. Bears are pretty intelligent. Dogs are pretty intelligent. If a dog doesn't want to be found, you're not going to find it. But I think on a scale of intelligence, I would have to say these things have to be right up there with us. And I think in some ways, probably even smarter, if that makes sense. I don't know how we're measuring intelligence. Maybe IQ, not necessarily as smart as we are or smarter, but as far as their environment goes, I don't think there's anything in the woods that's any smarter than they are.
I would agree with that. I would. I think, like you said, different type of intelligence. There are some things that we're smarter. I would definitely think, but other ways, I think they definitely have us beat. Yeah, I agree with that. All right, Brian, growing up in North Georgia area, like most little boys, I know I went through a time when I was little. I wanted to be a policeman when I grew up. So I think that kind of stuck with you, and that was your first career, wasn't it? Tell us a little bit about what got you wanting to be in law enforcement and your career.
Well, the first career choice for me was country music star as a kid. That's what I always wanted to do. I grew up singing. I grew up around music, and my uncle wrote songs for the group Alabama. I used to go and visit my uncle and my cousins, and Teddy Gentry and Randy Owen would be sitting in his living room writing songs, and I would sing with them, and just that was my first love. My second love, and I don't know how it even got to start or how it started with me, but my second love was wanting to be in law enforcement. Nobody in my family was a cop. Nobody had any experience with law enforcement. And outside of military service from some of my uncles and things like that, it just wasn't really on my radar. But I just always had that drive to want to be a cop. So, yeah, I mean, right out of high school, I was working. I was working in high school. Like I said, I was poor. I was one of those kids that if you wanted new school clothes, you had to work to get the school clothes because they didn't just show up, right? So I started working when I was 14 and a half, and it was in restaurants and retail and that kind of thing. And I did that when I got out of high school at 18. I started, in retail, but my first real career was in law enforcement. I was a City of Atlanta cop, and the first foray into law enforcement was actually in corrections. I started out in corrections, and I ended up. I stayed in corrections for about 7.5 years, the first part of my career. And I ended up as an administrator at a youth detention facility. And I tell you, in a lot of ways, that was probably a lot tougher than being a street cop in Atlanta. yeah, it was definitely an interesting career. But then I moved on. I wanted to be a big city cop, and I applied at some of the local jurisdictions, in North Georgia, and they all called me back. But I held out for Atlanta because that's where I wanted to go. I wanted the big city experience, and boy, did I ever get it. For about 10 years, I was there.
Oh wow. Yeah, I actually didn't know that you were in corrections, and a lot of our regulars know that that's actually how Walls and I met. We were both in corrections. My career did not last very long at all. It was not for me. There's just something about being called every name under the book, and then every name in the book, and spit at and peed at and stuff thrown at you, and then 5 minutes later you're their best friend. They want you to get them an extra cookie. You know, that didn't do it for me. But yeah, that's really cool. I didn't know that you were in correction, but that's how I met Walls. Actually, we worked at the Silverdale facility here in Chattanooga. Now, you said that you were on the streets for about 10 years in Atlanta.
Yes, 10 years.
Now, really quickly, tell us the scariest encounter that you had on the streets, because it's my opinion people are more scary than cryptids.
I definitely would not disagree with that statement. And I tell you, scary is a relative term for me, because there was very few things, unfortunately for me, that I was scared of on the street. I was, when I got shot at a couple of times, and I was the one that when the bullet started flying, my training kicked in and I was heading towards the gunfire where everybody else was running away. And I was like, that's not what they taught us in the academy. We're the sheepdogs. We're supposed to be going to save the sheep, and we're supposed to be heading towards the bad guy. So, but I was just that guy, bullets whizzing by and I'm headed right towards, so being shot at is kind of scary. It's definitely a scary thing. But I tell you, probably the scariest thing for me came towards the end of my career when I realized that it was time for me to hang it up. And that was one of the last cars that I pulled over. And it was just one of those moments where I was like, they took off running, it was a brief car chase. And once it was over, I actually stopped the chase myself. I told radio, I was like, hey, this person's headed down this street. I'm stopping because they're driving against traffic. They're going to kill somebody, and then I'm going to be responsible for it. Right. But I had a couple of experiences where I didn't get shot at, but I come very close, and, I had that sixth sense of, I need to walk around behind my car, and instead of going on the driver's side, I need to go around to the passenger side. And that happened. I've told that story on my show before, and I've told it on other shows, but car full of 4 or 5 guys, and the driver is waiting on me to come up to the window, and he's got a pistol in his hand and he's going to shoot me. And I just happened to go on the passenger side instead of the driver's side. And, I asked him after I pulled him out of the car, I got him all cuffed and I got the gun secured. And I said, what was your plan, man? He's like, I was going to shoot you. I'm like, why were you going to shoot me? Because we've been smoking weed and I knew you smelled it and I didn't want to go to jail. I was like, that's kind of scary.
You're going to take somebody's life to avoid a minor. That's a minor thing, getting arrested for pot, isn't it?
Yeah, in the city of Atlanta, that was probably, he would have been out. He wouldn't have even went to jail. He'd probably just got a ticket and signed his own bond. Yeah, but yeah, it's just a scary thing, man. And that was kind of the beginning of the end for me. I knew it was time for me to go. And just the lack of respect for law enforcement that I experienced. I can't speak globally for that, but I can just tell you what I experienced on the streets. It was a lot different than when I started, and it was just time for me to go.
Unfortunately, I think a lot of officers would agree with that, the lack of respect. That was certainly one of my problems in corrections, was with the lack of respect. And just you don't make enough money, man. You really do not make enough money for the stuff that you put up with. And thank you very much for the service and putting your life on the line, man. That's not an easy thing, and it takes a special kind of person to do that. It really does.
I think I was more crazy than special, but I definitely appreciate that. And that was the weird thing, right? I left in 2016 and we had not gotten raises. I actually got furloughed a couple of times back in like '07, '08 because the market crashed and the city was just in shambles, and they actually laid off police officers. I know that was not something that was unique to Atlanta, but I was laid off, as a cop, and I thought, what is happening here? But right before I left in 2016, they had, new administration came in, city council, and I'd actually gotten like a $30,000 a year raise right before I left. Right.
Ooh.
So people, when the raises came out, they were like, "Oh man, you're not going to leave now." And I was like, "Man, it could have been $300,000 a year, and I would not stay." And that was that's an honest statement. I was done. No amount of money could keep me going in and doing what I was doing every day. It just wasn't worth it to me.
Yeah. I don't blame you, man. And I'm certainly glad you made the career change. You're pretty good at what you're doing now.
I'm still learning. There's a learning curve.
So, I mean, that leads me to my next question. What got you, what made you decide to do this, to give this a shot?
I tell you, man, I went back into retail after I took some time off and traveled. We had a good time traveling, and then we purchased some property here in North Carolina, and I always worked. That's what I know how to do, is work. And I wanted to do something, to keep myself busy and obviously pay the bills. So I went back into retail. I started working at an auto parts store as a general manager, and it's a 50-hour a week. It's, there's no rest for the weary in that kind of business. And, it was killing me. And I knew that I had to do something different than what I was doing. And I had gotten into podcasts. I'd never really listened to podcasts, and somebody had turned me on to a Bigfoot podcast or two. And I listened to them and I thought, that is really fascinating stuff. I had experiences. I knew people that had experiences. And it started out really wanting to document as many cases as I could in the southeastern United States, Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, that area, because I was very curious about what's happening around where I live. So I thought, well, I listened to some of the shows and I thought, well, I don't have a clue how to podcast, but I at least want to talk to people and give them a place to come and tell their story. So I did. I just kind of said, well, I'm going to do this. I started a Facebook page and started getting into the Facebook groups and saying, hey, has anybody had an experience? I'd like to talk to you. And the very first person that reached out to me was a guy here in North Carolina. I think his name was Kale. And he was episode 1 of the show. Had a roadside crossing. And it was brief, but he had some other experiences later on. And, it turned into a 50+ minute episode of the show. And I recorded it on my phone. It's the only way I had to record it back then. There's it's a app called Rev, R-E-V. And I downloaded it on my phone, and I would put my earbuds in and I would call him, hit the button, it would record, and then I would put it on my computer and try to edit it. I had no clue what I was doing. And it sounded horrible. The audio quality was horrendous, but I was doing what I wanted to do. And I immediately fell in love with just talking to people. I just got lost in it. It became sort of a hobby for me. A release from this job that I hated was to be able to come home and schedule an interview. I'd literally walk in the door at 6:30 sometimes, and I'd have an interview scheduled at 7. And I just started putting it out there for people to listen to. And thank God people made it through the first 10 or 15 episodes and stuck around, because it kind of grew into, well, what it is today. And it went way beyond the southeastern United States. It's global now. I've talked to people literally in Korea and, the UK and other places that have had experiences. And so, luckily for me, the show Sasquatch Odyssey was successful enough. I started another show to do the paranormal stuff. I did the Paranormal Odyssey, and now I'm doing the true crime show, the True Crime Odyssey. And now I'm doing the show with Doug. So I do 4 full-time podcasts, But I finally got to a point where I was able to do this full time back, I think in March of this year. I was able to quit my full time job and devote all of my time to what I really love to do, which is doing the show. And here I am.
And you were able to do that in a year's time. That's so impressive, man. It really is. It speaks volume to just the kind, just how good of a dude you are. I mean, that's what I've come to find out, and you're doing a really good job. You really are. Um, I just wanted to ask, my next question is, of all the people that you've interviewed, because man, you are not afraid to go after the big names. That's one of the things that I respect about you, and that's something that I haven't done a whole lot of, is go after the big names. Who has been the most intimidating person to interview thus far? In the 2 years you've been doing this?
Yeah, I posted the first show on Sasquatch Odyssey. It was February 7th of 2021. So, yeah, going on 2 years.
Okay.
There's been a couple of people that sort of were intimidating. I think the first name that comes to mind as far as intimidation for me was Jeff Meldrum, Dr. Meldrum. He was episode 10 of my show. I think I interviewed Ron Moorhead was maybe episode 7 or 8, and then I had Jeff Meldrum on episode 10. And it's he is the man when it comes to Bigfoot research, and I was petrified because he's always the smartest person in the room. I am not always the smartest person in the room, so I was very intimidated just having a conversation with him, because he's done tons of podcasts and he's done tons of interviews. He's on just about every Bigfoot documentary that's out there. And I watched this guy, and now I'm face to face with him having a conversation, and I'm trying to hold my own. And I was intimidated, And I actually told this story at the Squatch Out, and I've never really told it anywhere else before. But before we went on, I had him, kind of queued up, and we were getting ready to go. And I was like, how should I refer to you on the episode? Should I call you Jeff, or should I call you Dr. Meldrum? And he said, let's stick with Dr. Meldrum for now. And that really, I've listened to the episode back since then, and I can hear a little quiver in my voice because I was already nervous. And the second he said that to me, it just sent me over the edge of, I was petrified at that point. But it took me about 2 sentences in. I'm kind of a red light performer, when the camera's on and the lights start, I'm into it. I'm in the moment, and I just lose myself in the interview. And it was probably one of the best interviews I think I've ever done. I'm very sad that the audio is horrible because I overcompressed it when I uploaded it, and it's almost unlistenable. So I was going to try to get him back on the show. He was up at the Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Conference a couple of weeks back, and I was going to try to do it up there. We'll still probably get him back on. I'd like to have him back on, and maybe we'll talk about the Freeman book. He wrote a chapter in the Freeman book, so I'm trying to get him on and Cliff Barackman on. Cliff wrote a chapter in the book for Michael as well. So maybe I'll get them back on, and I'll get to redeem myself with Dr. Jeff Meldrum, and maybe have a better episode with some better audio for you guys to listen to.
Now, how was he? Like behind the scenes. I mean, is he easy to talk to? I mean, is he as intimidating as he comes off?
He could be a little intimidating, but he was a super nice guy. By the end of the interview, I think I held my own enough. He didn't think I was a complete idiot. So I think we had a better conversation on the tail end of the interview. It's funny, he had actually double booked himself, and I had to edit the crap out of the end of it because we ended so abruptly. He was like, I am so sorry. I never do this, but I've got like another call in like 3 minutes, and he had to go. But I got about an hour out of him, which was really good. But I had to edit the end of it because it was kind of abrupt, and he was like, he was very apologetic, which I appreciated very much. And I don't know that I would have gotten that had the interview not had went as well as it did.
Okay, yeah, I mean, man, just the cojones you've got to have to 10 episodes in ask the biggest name in Bigfoot to come on your show. You're a brand new show. Nobody knows who you are just yet. And then you ask the biggest name, or arguably the biggest name in Bigfoot research out right now. I gotta give it to you, man. That's awesome. But then Ron Moorhead's right up there with him, and you had him on even before Meldrum. How was he?
Super nice guy. Just wonderful guy. I can text him to this day and send him evidence, and he will respond almost immediately. He's actually here in North Carolina now. He moved from out west out here to North Carolina. So I'd like to catch back up with him. I got to see him. He wasn't at the conference this year, but I saw him at the conference last year, and we got to hang out. And he's still doing his thing, man. He's like an Energizer bunny. He continues to hit up these things. You know, his talks are great. You know, it's there's nothing like hearing the Sierra Sounds story from somebody like Ron, who was there and experienced it. And there was so much more to that. It wasn't just the recordings. There were so many more experiences that he and those guys had at that camp. Some weird stuff went on up there, you know, and people kind of look sideways at Ron sometimes because of his I don't know if it's kind of out there, or maybe people consider it to be a little woo.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, his experiences are his experiences. You know, people say the same thing about Les Stroud. You know, I was emailing Meldrum to get him on, but I was also emailing Les Stroud at the same time. It took me about 50 more episodes to get him because he was that busy. I literally got a message back from Les Stroud when I was emailing him early on, and he was working on a project at the time that was going to be like 7 or 8 months before he could do any Bigfoot stuff, right? He couldn't talk about stuff Bigfoot because of contractual agreements and things like that. So I literally had to sit on Les Stroud for like 8 months before I could actually have him on the show, which really just stuck in my craw. But I was glad that I waited because I was in a much better place, you know, 8 months into the show to have a good interview with him and build a rapport that still lasts to this day, you know. I was so nervous when I had Les on. I forgot to ask him to do the opening shout out in the beginning of the show, and I had to send him a message afterwards, and he literally recorded it on his phone and texted it to me like 2 or 3 days later, just out of the blue. That's the kind of guy he is, you know.
Wow, that's really cool. Now, if I heard you right a little bit at the Squatch Eye, you talked about you were able to get Todd Standing on your show because of Les Stroud. Did Stroud help you? Les Stroud help you to get Todd Standing on? Because you've been very, very open and opinionated on Todd Standing. But before you answer that, let's go ahead and share your thoughts on Todd Standing.
God, my listeners are so. I literally got a message from somebody yesterday like, please stop talking about Todd Standing. He should be paying you for advertisement on his show because you talk about Todd Standing almost every episode. But you know what? I've said it before. Todd Standing is an influencer in Bigfoot. No matter what you think about him, no matter what you think about his personality, no matter what you think about his footage, he is somebody in the Bigfoot community. So my opinion has not changed of Todd at all. I think it started out in the same place that it is today. And that is, I believe that Todd Standing has had real encounters. I don't doubt that at all. What I do doubt is the fact that he's put out numerous videos, I don't know how many there are at this point, of different things that he purports to be a Sasquatch. And I don't believe that he's caught Sasquatch on video. I just don't believe the videos are real. So.
Yeah, now we did speak about one that pretty confident that might be real. The one of what appears to be something on 2 legs running up the hill, that seems like it could be something. And even before I spoke to you, went on your show, that was my opinion. What you said has been my opinion on Todd Standing this entire time, that the up close, the pictures of the face, the up close stuff, I mean, it's almost laughable in my opinion that I don't think it's real. But that one shot of something running up that hill, doing it quite quickly with very little effort, I feel like that's the real deal.
Yeah, I had that opinion before you and I talked about it, and that was the one video that I always thought might be legit. And then I had a conversation with Todd and Kyle Deshane, who does the Discovering Bigfoot podcast for Todd on his YouTube channel. And I still haven't looked it up. He said that Todd has a video where he breaks down and they do some measurements, and this thing literally runs uphill faster than a man can run down it. And it's a pretty steep grade. It's probably 7% or so. I don't know. I'm just taking a stab in the dark. But, that to me could be real. I don't know. And all of his other videos could be real. I hope I'm wrong. I say it all the time. I hope I'm wrong about him. I wish that they were all real. I just don't believe they are. So we go around and around. And I don't think, I don't necessarily think Les made a phone call to Todd. I think just having Les on the show and talking about Todd with Les on the show was enough to push him over the edge. I've never asked him if that's why he came on, but and we've become friends since then. I've not made any qualms about it. I don't have anything personally against him other than the fact that I think he's put out hoaxed videos. I can still like the guy and just not like what he did or what he does, but I think he has real encounters and I think he has real experiences, but you just can't unring the bell once you put that stuff out there and say, this is real, like you said.
Now, how does he react when you tell him something like that? Like, you're pretty much calling him a liar to his face. I mean, what does he say? How does he react to that?
I mean, he's a lot different guy than he was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, Todd, we'd probably be in a fight if we were, we'd be at fisticuffs, but he's mellowed out a lot. He does a lot of behind the scenes, meditation. He's a very chill dude. And I think he's dealt with it for so long. He's learned to expect it. I think he's actually surprised when people don't say that his stuff is fake, honestly.
Yeah.
And I know it doesn't make it any easier. And I think, the way that I present it, maybe, I don't know. But his reaction is always the same. You can believe what you want to believe. The footage stands for itself. It's never been debunked. It's never been proven to be faked. Nobody's ever come forward and proven that it's a fake. And, my argument to that always is it's a lot harder to prove something's a fake than proving it's real, honestly, because
I think so.
It's the same thing with the Patterson-Gimlin film. We've been talking about that for 55 years. And, nobody can prove that it's a fake, but nobody can really prove that it's absolutely 100% real. And it's the same thing with Todd's footage, unless somebody comes out and produces this animatronic animal or the suit that somebody was wearing and says, here's the smoking gun that he faked it, there'll always be that little bit of doubt because he's got a lot of supporters. He's got a lot of people in his camp that believe wholeheartedly that his stuff is real, and as long as that's the case, there's always going to be two sides to the coin. I want to believe, I want it to be true. I just don't think it is.
I want to go, man. I want to go on one of his encounters. I can't afford it, first of all, because man's making some money doing what he's doing, and I don't know exactly how much he charges, but I know it's up there. It's up there. I know you've got the invite to go, and maybe I'll get one day, but I would love to take him up on it, man, and go out there and see what he's experiencing and make a believer out of me. I'd love for that opportunity.
Yeah, I definitely want to go, man. Like I said, Kyle is sort of taking that over from Todd. I think he's kind of taken over the day-to-day operations. At least that's the plan for them. And I want to go up and experience it because I would love to have some of the same type of experiences they have, because I believe that they're really having those kind of experiences. But, maybe next year. I don't know. I think I've missed the opportunity for this year was like last month, and it's, that's came and went. So hopefully next year I'll get to go.
If you get another invite, ask about a +1, and I'll be happy to go with you, man. I will.
I'll definitely throw that in there.
Now, what is going on at your property? You guys got right at 40 acres in North Carolina, and you've you've been experiencing some odd happenings. What's going on, man?
Odd happenings is a good way to put it, because I don't know honestly what's going on. There's been several things that have happened since we've been here. I'll start with the beginning of what happened. It was vocalizations. We always kind of thought there might be something around just because of the way the property's positioned, and the surrounding area is nothing but woods. I've talked about it. There's hundreds and hundreds of acres of woods around the property. And then our 40 acres is kind of smack dab in the middle of all that. But when we first got here, we were, out in the hot tub at night off the deck of the tiny house, and we would hear these really strange, like Ohio howl type vocalizations, 2 miles away, like this ridge behind us where there's like, a couple hundred acres behind us. And we would hear that. And it's just like, yeah, that's kind of weird. Was that a coyote? I don't know. Did I have an extra glass of wine and I'm just hearing things? I don't know. But heard that several times. And I guess it was last year. It was probably towards the end of the summer, maybe about this time, maybe a little earlier. And I'd finished up some stuff with the show, and I was sitting up we have a sleeping loft up in the tiny house, and we got the windows open. It's like 50 degrees outside, perfect sleeping with the windows open, at least for me, kind of weather. And we hear 50 yards in the woods from the house, this Ohio howl type, kind of long vocalization with like this bark on the end. And it wasn't just hearing it, it was literally feeling it in my chest. And I was stunned. I was literally stunned, because it's almost the same thing that we were hearing, what sounded like a mile away, in the way far off distance. But now it's right here, 50 yards from the house. That's close. That's pretty close. And I'm estimating it, it could have been 25, it could have been 60, I don't know. But that was really that moment where I thought something is definitely going on. But, what do you do? Like, I'm certainly not going to run out there and see what it was. There's plenty of people I've told the story, and they're like, why didn't you go out and see what it was? Why won't you go look and just come back and report to me? Because I'm not going out there. Because I was really afraid of what it might be, And that happened. And then I started noticing, stick structures and X formations and things that could be totally innocuous. It could be nature, right? It could be deadfall. But then I started noticing trees woven into other trees. And I posted some of this stuff on the Sasquatch Odyssey Instagram. I've got videos up over there. I've got tons of pictures up over there of just me walking in the woods and these weird things. We were filming the television show last year. It was towards the end of last year when we were filming this television show for Vice. And the cameraman that's filming pickups in my woods points to an area that I'd never really even walked in. And he's like, what is that over there? That looks really weird. And I walk into the middle of like these huge stick structures and kind of fulcrum, stuff on top of other stuff, balanced. Things being woven into each other again. And I was like, this is really strange. I'd passed by this place and I just never walked the extra 40 yards to actually go inside and check it out. But when I did, it was really, really strange. I can't say what did it. I don't know if it's deadfall or not, but it looks really weird to me. It doesn't look like it's natural. It looks like something has placed it there. And then just recently, the most recent thing, I guess, was, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago now, walking the dogs around the same area we walk every day, kind of a big circle around the outside perimeter of the property. And then we cut back in and go through this area that's probably, I don't know, 300-400 yards from the house. And something catches my eye on this stump, and it's this turtle shell, like a box turtle that's turned upside down and shoved into the side of this like old cedar log. And I'm like, I walk over to it and I'm like, how did that? And I literally stood there for like 10 or 15 minutes trying to recreate or figure out how this turtle shell could have naturally ended up in the position that it was in on this stump. And again, you can see those pictures on our Instagram page at Sasquatch Odyssey. I've got video and pictures of it over there because I left it. I left it for like 3 days. I just walked away like, that's just scratching my head going, that's really strange. And so after a couple of 3 days, I went back out there and I tried to, position it and move it and say, how could this happen naturally? Right. I'm trying to look at this kind of a scientific approach. I just couldn't figure out how I could do it because it wasn't laying on top of the log or the stump. It was stuck into the side of it. Like something had to position it there so it wouldn't fall off and slide down. It was really weird. So I thought, okay, maybe it's some kind of a gifting thing. Maybe something did put it there. So I decided I was going to take it. I brought it up to the house. I actually hung it on a tree outside of the chicken coop. I took a small rock that has I actually took it off of the memorial for our little Yorkie that passed away a couple of years ago. And it says love on it. It's got like a little heart, purple heart in this smooth rock. I took it up there on the stump and I put a trail cam up right in front of the log. And I said, okay. So I posted that on Instagram. People immediately, oh my God, you can't do that. If it's a gifting situation, there's a camera, the Sasquatch isn't going to come back. Again, people saying they know definitive things about Sasquatch. I kind of, just say, yeah, well, okay, whatever. I'm not going to be the guy who's going to do this and try to capture some evidence and then not do anything to try to capture the evidence, right? I'm just going to put something out here on the stump. It's going to disappear with no camera. I'm just going to say, well, the rock's gone. Okay, well, that doesn't make sense to me. So I put the trail cam up and then people started messaging me saying, hey, use apples. Put an apple out. Todd Standing uses apples. It works for Todd, right? So you can put some apples out. Well, we had some apples that were going bad. So I came in and got one. It was kind of soft already. So I put it on the end of a stick and I stuck the stick down next to the rock in the soft part of this log, right? This stump. And I left it with the camera. I think 3 days went by, 2 or 3 days went by. I'd go by every day, pull the SD card out, check it, nothing but raccoons. Like 4 raccoons the first day, I think, couple the next day, raccoons the third day. Apple is untouched, rock is untouched. I mean, you can see I've got the footage here somewhere on the SD card. You can see the raccoons and you can see the apple and stuff in the background. It's kind of hard to make out, but the apple is intact. It hasn't been eaten, hasn't been bitten on. Nothing's touched it. So after like 3 days of this, I decided to take the camera down. Thinking, well, maybe something's happening, or maybe nothing's going to happen as long as the camera's up. So I'm going to take the camera down. Took the camera down on my morning walk. Apple hasn't been touched. Nothing's been touched. Rock's still there. Came back the very next day, and something had taken a bite out of the apple. I say a bite. It could possibly be 2 bites. I don't know. So, of course, the first thing that goes through my mind is, how does this happen? Right? Like, what did that? I see raccoons on the camera for like 3 days and they don't touch this apple. Were they waiting on it to get rotten? I don't know. But something took a bite out of the apple. So you were the first person. I took pictures of this. I brought the apple back to the house. Just pulled the stick up in the apple because it's still on same position. Rock's still there. Apple's in the middle of the stump on the same stick that I put it on. The only difference is the bite or bites that's been taken out of the apple. So I snapped like 3 or 4 pictures and I texted them to you and I was like, dude, what does this look like? And I know what it looks like to me, but I need a second opinion here. And what was your response to that?
It looks just like a human took a big bite out of an apple. It's an old, decayed-looking apple, and I should have thought to put that picture up. And I didn't be too hard to get up now to share it with everybody, but you've shared the picture since, haven't you?
I did. I put it out on my Instagram page, so you can
Yeah.
go to Sasquatch Odyssey on Instagram and see it.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean the apple, you can tell it's old. It's certainly not an apple I'd want to take a bite of, but it looks like a big human mouth took a bite out of it. It really does. And man, what does it mean that it was out there all that time with nothing while the camera was up? You take the camera down and something happens.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird, man. And I wrestled with whether I was even going to put that stuff out there because I don't want people to think that I'm trying to indulge or make things up, or I just put out there what happens. And I'm not saying that it was a Bigfoot by any stretch of the imagination. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that at all. I'm just saying it's really strange, and I don't know what could have done it. I really don't.
Now, since all this have happened, you have had some other type of activity on your property of the human sort.
Yes,
Do you
we
think there's a
definitely.
connection? Could there be a connection?
Well, in fairness, that's one of the things that people were saying to me when I first had the situation with the turtle shell is you got a trespasser. A trespasser snuck up there and put it on the log. No, not on that part of the property. They just didn't do it. Right. And then, of course, we have this activity that happens. And then we do have somebody that trespasses on the property. They cut a chain, they take down some motion sensors, they take down cameras, they steal a camera and walk up to within probably 150, 200 yards from my house. And we caught them on camera. We called the police and had a report done and replaced our cameras and put the new security stuff up. And hopefully they won't come back. I really don't think they knew there was a house back here. I think they were just trying to steal what they could steal close to because we got a big generator down there that they could see from the road. And I think they just saw the house and maybe got spooked, hopefully. But, I don't really think there's a correlation. I don't think the person on the camera came back, another 600 or 800 yards behind the house up on the property and took a bite out of a rotten apple. I don't really see any correlation there at all.
Because that was going to be my next question is how close is the new gifting stump and where the video took place of the trespasser. So they're not very close.
Not at all. No, the video that I posted with the trespasser it's about 300 feet off the road. And we're talking, like I said, another 600 or 800 yards into the woods where the stump is located.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, what do you think about continuing to gift? Do you think that might be something that you want to do? Because you and I have spoke before about habituations and people that have them. It'd be pretty cool. Work yourself into a situation like that,
Yeah, well, the rock is still there. I did take the apple off and toss it in the bin afterwards. We've got a composting pile out there, so it's in the compost pile. I did not send it off for DNA. I'm not going down that road. I'm sure people are going to ask those kind of questions, and I'm just not that guy. It is what it is. I don't know what it is, but I took it as far as I'm willing to take it. The rock is still out there. There's not been any more activity that I know of around that area. The dogs act kind of weird on the trail, but most of the time that's just we got coyotes all over the place. We've got foxes that are constantly killing our chickens. So there's all that kind of stuff. I find feces from, scat from coyotes on the trails all the time. So I don't necessarily chalk the weird behavior from the dogs up to Bigfoot. But yeah, I mean, if that was a possibility, if that's what it is, I would certainly not be opposed to that. I'm not scared to do that per se. I just don't know. I don't know enough about what's going on to say that I would be willing to invest a lot of time to try to make that happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's the right way to approach it, I would think. That's my dream though, man, my dream would be to be in an habituation type of experience, but what I want to get out of this show, and I've said it from day one, I want to meet that family or that little old man or that woman with land around me somewhere that has that type of relationship with these things that let me get involved. That's what I want to gain from this show. If that's all I gain from the show, I'll be happy. Is to just get that kind of relationship with them. That I think that's like the ultimate goal, to learn what we can about these things without actually killing one.
Yeah, and I think there's so many people that have claimed that. I've had people on the show that haven't come right out and said I've habituated to Bigfoot, but the stories that they tell and the way that they claim to interact with these creatures, that's basically what it is. They're feeding them at arm's length, and they're constantly coming on the property and within close quarters and that kind of stuff. I just don't know. Some of those stories are a little fantastical for me. You know, I'm not saying they're not happening, but I'm a little bit more skeptical when it comes to those kind of stories, because we don't know anything about these creatures, really. We don't. I mean, outside of the anecdotal stuff that you and I collect when we're talking to people and interviewing people, you really don't know. And I don't know that, I'm not saying it's impossible. I think it's highly unlikely, in my opinion, that if these creatures are what I think they are, that they would be or allow themselves to be in a situation where they're habituated. You know, I don't really think there's anything they need from us. And, you know, coming and taking apples and easy pickings kind of food, sure. I mean, anything's going to do that. Humans clearly do that off of each other. So I think that's going to happen, but I don't know about the relationship that some people have claimed. You know, hopefully I'm wrong. You know, that would be the ultimate coolness for that to happen. And I would certainly love to experience that, but I'm just not sure how feasible it is, honestly.
Well, you open the door, so let's walk through it. What do you think they are?
I think there's some sort of relict hominoid. I think they're very close to us. You know, I don't really get into the camp of, I think it's Gigantopithecus, or I think it's Australopithecus, or whatever the Pithecus might be. I don't think we know enough about these creatures. We don't have proof that they're real. So when you start getting into what they are, to me, it really doesn't matter, honestly. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what they are. You know, that part of it would come, but I think they're close to us, a lot closer than a lot of people would want to believe. And I think there's some sort of a relict hominoid. They might be some sort of, they might be an offshoot of Gigantopithecus or whatever the case may be. I don't know. But I think they're very close to us. I don't think they're some big dumb ape in the woods. I think they have an intelligence. I think they're sentient beings. I think they're highly intelligent. You know, they clearly, if they exist, they do a very good job most of the time of staying hidden until they want to be seen, which that opens up a whole other can of worms of, if they're so smart. I've said it on the show before, if they're so smart, why is it that, at least a couple of times a year I talk to somebody who almost takes one out with a Prius on the highway? I mean, but that's a whole nother show in and of itself.
Yeah. I mean, you could be onto something there. It's certainly fair. Very well said. But, yeah, man, we're an hour and 15 minutes in. I know your throat has to be killing you. So I think it's a pretty good time to end it. Buddy, I want to thank you for taking the time to come on and talk with me and hang out. I appreciate it, bud.
Absolutely, man. Anytime.
All right. Yeah. Well, first off, tell everybody, give yourself a plug like you really need it on my show, but tell everybody where they can find you.
Anywhere you find podcast. You can find Sasquatch Odyssey, Paranormal Odyssey, True Crime Odyssey, and if you're on a YouTube trip, I do have a YouTube page, Sasquatch Odyssey on YouTube. You can go over there and give me a subscribe and a follow. I'm trying to clean that up and post more videos over there. I've got lots of cool interviews. You can go over there now and see the Les Stroud interview if you're interested in that. Todd Standing's up. Quite a few people over there that I've interviewed are on the YouTube page. And if you want to check out the new show that I'm doing with Doug Hycheck, that's on Untold Radio AM on YouTube. You can go over there and give us a subscribe. We've got like 9 shows. We drop content every single day. So there's something over there for everybody.
Okay, and I just noticed we did have one question come through, and I do want to get that before we get out of here. Bigfoot Whisperer, I believe that's John Tucker. Brian, do you hear any tree knocks on your property?
Never heard any tree knocks.
Never heard a tree knock.
No.
That's surprising in my opinion.
Not to say they're not happening.
Yeah.
I've never heard anything that I would consider to be a tree knock.
Okay. All right, buddy. Again, thanks so very much for coming on and hanging out, and get better, buddy. Hope you feel better, and take care, and we'll talk soon.
Awesome, man. You too.
See you, bud. All right, guys, there you are. And Miss Jordan, I'm so very sorry. I hope I'm not in the doghouse, but I'm just now seeing your question to Brian, close to Roanoke Island. I will ask him and let you know. All right, guys, thanks so much for hanging out with me tonight. Mr. Brian was cool enough to come on even though he's a bit under the weather, and hanging out with us, fresh off of the Squatch out. Again, guys, had a great time on the event. All right, guys, I'm gonna get out of here. Y'all take care of each other. Be good to each other. And we will see you next time. Be good, guys.